according to Facebook, we are live. So we're going to go with it.
Okay.
Welcome to 18. We are back. Crazy Writer Chicks are back. It has been a wonderful month-long-ish vacation, I think, for all of us. But we are happy to be back with a live event night and talking about the growth mindset. So as you probably know, if you've been around for a little while, my name is Nikki Rome. I've got Rebecca White and Winter Navi with me tonight. And we also have a very special guest, Dr. Deborah Lavacca, who's here talking to us about growth mindset. But before we turn it over to her, I'm going to turn it over to Becca to kind of give you a little background on her. She has known Deborah her whole life.
Life, yes.
I'll let her go ahead.
Because
Becca,
I'm the proud older sister. I'm the proud older sister of Deborah, and I'm going to call her Deborah because it just feels very awkward.
And it's much better than the nickname our dad gave me, so let's not share that on Facebook.
Yeah. Dear. But anyway, yes, so I've known Deborah her whole life, and she's always been a great sister, but we are here to talk about growth mindset, and I have heard some of her stuff because I have read her dissertation that she wrote for her doctorate, and but I am really interested to hear more about like where this came from and stuff, because we'd have some conversations about it, but I don't really know like what inspired all of this and where she got the idea. And I'm glad she did, because now, I mean, I read the book after talking to her about it, and it was definitely helpful for me and for my family. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. And yeah, so let me see. Would you start us off with what?
I should grab the book off my shelf so people can see
She was leaving us.
Never mind. I don't really like this idea. So I could go get it if you want to.
I guess I should.
It's sitting up.
I suppose I could go get it too.
Yes, just so the book.
Yeah. This is probably the one you're talking about.
Yes, that's the one I have.
And then I also enjoyed this one because it talks about
that's the one I have.
We could swap and trade.
Yeah, we should. I never read the other one.
This one offers some good like month-to-month kind of like prompting and classroom ideas. Obviously, you could use them in other parts of your life, but like hands-on, basically a month-to-month like lesson plan of how you could implement that into your classroom. So that's more for teachers. This one is just like a super easy read on like what growth mindset is and applying it to like all aspects of your life: parenting, school, business, marriage, family, relationships, all that kind of thing.
So I guess we should probably start with like, what is growth mindset, right?
Yeah.
Or Deborah, tell us a little bit about yourself too.
Start with what it. Can you do me a favor and start with like what growth mindset is, just so anyone who watches it can say, "Oh, here's why I want to hear this." You know what I mean? Like, why should people listen to this little lesson or interview, whatever you want to call it?
So, mindset in general is just defined as like a set of attitudes and beliefs about your abilities. And you oftentimes thought about your abilities intellectually, but it doesn't have to be just academics. It can be talents, skills, hobbies, you know, any sort of behaviors and your attitude about anything you attempt to do in life. But Dweck is the main researcher who kind of coined this concept, this theory, this theoretical framework, and she categorizes your mindset into two different categories. So a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. Fixed mindset being individuals who feel like I have to know the right answer already. My ability and what I can do and what I can know is set for me, and I can't really, there's a maximum, and I can't really learn beyond that. A lot of times people with fixed mindsets will avoid a challenging task because they want to keep this facade of looking smart, and they're afraid to mess up in front of other people, or else that they might, you know, lose all those compliments that they often get about, oh, you're so smart. Hi, Trooper.
Hi, Trooper.
The growth mindset is more of believing that if you practice, you can overcome those challenges, and viewing the challenges and viewing mistakes as an opportunity to get better at something instead of a failure. And so it focuses more on the process of learning instead of the outcome. But Carol Dweck talks about the fact that most of the time, all of us, we're both, right? We're both from time to time. We don't, you might say like, oh, I have a growth mindset. Well, maybe sometimes, but I think probably everybody will catch themselves at some point being in that fixed mindset about something. And we can train ourselves to recognize it and then try to, get more into the growth mindset as often as possible. So when Becca was talking about why I started pursuing this, it really was conversations with my husband about our two kids. So my son, Zachary, he's 14 now, and my daughter, Annabella's 11, and they're just very different personalities. And we were like, how is this that we raise them like the same, and yet early on, you could see such differences of like Zachary's natural abilities to just learn things really quickly, catch on, especially academics, just super fast, first time, soaks it in, spits it out, like he picks it up quickly. Annabella has to usually work a little bit harder, especially in math, not really like writing and language arts, but in reading. But it doesn't come as easily to her. And yet she doesn't shy away from those challenges, and she just kind of like persists and works really hard through them. If Zachary is faced with something, he oftentimes will like avoid that task then, or like find another way around it. And we were like, why? Like, what is this? So that kind of was the discussion way back when I started my doctorate classes of like, it would be really interesting to pursue that. And like, maybe there's something there in the classroom that I could bring in like educationally. And so sure enough, like it was, and it's a thing. And, I just had to learn about it. And so I started using it in my classroom after some professional developments and things. And I've used it pretty consistently, probably for like 5 years or so in my classroom, just with like language, posters, newsletters, writing assignments, just anytime I can get the kids talking, and really direct instruction even. So I will teach them, hey, your brain is a muscle and your brain can grow just like any other muscles when you exercise it. Your muscles, if you're running or jogging or lifting weights, they're not going to grow if you're just doing the easy amount. Then they're not going to get as strong. But when you challenge yourself and you actually are working your muscles and exercising them, that's when they grow more. And your brain is the same way. And so really, again, like you can directly just teach that, because people, it wasn't that long ago, I want to say even just like a decade or two ago, that there wasn't this concept of your brain being like elastic, like, and actually growing. And it was kind of set like, well, you have what you have and that's it. And good luck, But now when people realize that like, hey, with effort and with hard work and with, trying to overcome challenges, my brain can get bigger and it can grow more. So that's one of the ways, this plasticity of teaching that to the kids, but also just they're teaching them that effort and that persistence, and another key word in there of grit, that it can help them learn more, can help them get stronger in whatever. Again, it's not always academics. One of the assignments I have my kids do is talk about a time when they didn't know how to do something, and now they did. And they'd have to do a little video of themselves, riding their bike or swimming or building a Lego house or cooking, whatever, doing a craft. It doesn't matter what it is. And then they write a little bit about it and, how it felt when they didn't know how to do this thing and now they can do this thing. So it doesn't have to just be an academic task.
It could be the Force, because Yoda had it wrong. Right? I always think about that. Like, do or do not. There is no try, but actually there is a try. Like, trying is really important.
Yeah.
A lot of trying.
Definitely. And praising their efforts, like focusing on the effort that a kid or a person is putting into their job, their marriage, their parenting, their, schoolwork, instead of the outcome. So, if a kid gets a math problem wrong in class, it's not like, oh, you did that wrong. Instead, like, look at that as an opportunity for, okay, like, what went wrong? Let's reflect on this. Let's look at this. What happened? And make them comfortable making those mistakes. And focusing on the improvement of it. And like, I'll make mistakes on purpose in class and, like make the kids laugh so that they can get comfortable making mistakes. And one of you guys said to share like a real life example. So I brought garlic powder. So one area that I use growth mindset in a lot is cooking, because I'm not really a huge cooking fan. It's not really like my thing. I enjoy it more now. We just moved a year ago, and now that I actually have like a kitchen and some place to like cook, I do enjoy it more. But that's not really like, I make like 3 meals. My kids will say my guacamole, my potato salad, and my chicken Alfredo are better than the restaurants, but everything else is probably not so good. Those are my 3 meals. That's it. So, but I like to think about growth mindset in that, because I know that it's a weakness of mine, or something that, again, I know I could get better at, right? So every time we cook, and I'm sure you ladies have had some fantastic meals that you've made, but also maybe some disasters or something that didn't go quite right. And so, like maybe you struggled through it and ate it anyway, or maybe you threw it out and you got takeout instead. But, improving on that the next time and saying like, okay, what went wrong? Did I put too much of this or too little of this, or mix it too much, or, the temperature was wrong again, like, where did I make a mistake? Growth mindset, and just reflecting on that so that it can become better the next time. And the last time I was making I was making roasted oven potatoes, and I went to mix the garlic in before I put them in the oven, and I was kind of in a hurry, and I used this side of the container to dump the garlic in instead of that side of my container. And so the potatoes were extra garlicky. But now I just take this little piece of tape and I just tape down the scoop side.
So now you will always be better next time.
I don't need that part. So I could rely on just my own, like, okay, check before you dump, but, that'll just help me. So,
I like it.
Problem solving.
Yeah. Yeah, that's when it's better to know yourself than it is to try to be more self-controlled. Like, just know that that's something you're likely to do and take care of it, instead of being like, no, I'll do better.
Exactly. Like, well, it happened once. I probably will be in a rush and do it again. So we're just going to take that down.
It's funny how you talk about applying growth mindset to all different aspects of your life. So I first learned about growth mindset when I was finishing a degree in elementary education. me having the coach book is because one of the professors I had us implementing it in lesson plans as much as you can. Because I guess the idea around growth mindset is to start really early so that you don't have a fixed mindset like I have. So I love the idea, right? And then in 2019, we had gotten together for a department meeting up in Birmingham, Alabama, and our company paid a lot of money to a company to come in and train us on neuroplasticity. And I was like, wow, this sounds familiar. And the entire week-long meeting was thinking outside of the box and what can we do? Because I work in the financial industry, so we are very much box people. And it was interesting seeing how the two correlated, because essentially what this company was coming in and doing was teaching growth mindset to a bunch of adults. And when I had originally learned the concept, I had only learned of it, as really teaching children it, right? I can't do it yet, or let's try again type concepts. I mean, I've got books on this stuff, like kids' books on this stuff that I read to my kids all the time, trying to remind them to keep trying. But my fixed mindset gets in the way of even teaching my children that. So I'm curious, as you delved into this, did you find yourself to be more of a fixed or growth mindset person? And as you teach your students, do you find yourself getting in the way sometimes? Or did you take naturally to being a growth mindset person?
Absolutely. I agree with Carol Dweck when she says that we're all both at different times. I definitely think that that's true because it does affect so many aspects of our lives. I feel like in the classroom, I feel like in general, I probably am more of a growth mindset kind of a person, like looking for positive in a situation and just kind of trying to sorry, let's try this again. And, not getting too frustrated, usually at least the first couple times, and getting back up and like reflecting and how can I do this again? But I did notice when I started direct instruction, like very intentional with my students, that it started to affect how I reacted to like their parents and the families. So I did notice a difference there because we all make mistakes, right? And I know as a teacher, I used to try to like pretend when a mistake was made, like, oh, I forgot to put that in the grade book. And like, so, a parent asks me like, why isn't that grade updated? I'll make up some excuse, like I just didn't get there yet, when really like I forgot, right? And now my answer is just like, oops, I forgot, sorry, and I'll fix that right now, and then I'll email them back and say like, it's done. Thank you so much for reminding me, instead of finding some sort of excuse to try to save face, right? I don't feel the need. Maybe that's because now I'm more confident in myself, or maybe that's because I have more years of teaching, under my belt. When at first you feel like you have to pretend like you know everything, I don't know. But I definitely see my interaction with my families and not being afraid to say like, I goofed, I messed up, I forgot, I did whatever, that was just a mistake. It was a glitch, it was an error, whatever. And not feeling like I have to pretend that it was something else. In my dissertation writing, it was amazing that my topic was growth mindset, because it got me through finishing that task, because I had to use what I was reading and researching every day. Like I wouldn't have been finished if I hadn't been doing that topic where I was like preaching to myself every sentence, of like, okay, this is exactly what I'm saying to the reader, and I have to practice this to get this done. So I used it a lot. And one of my dissertation chair, one of my professors, he was cute, because at the end of my defense, he said, "You're like the poster child for growth mindset," because he knew it was. He knew that I think if I compared my amount of rounds of edits and revisions to other people's, that I had to probably do a lot more than they did. And so he knew that that took a growth mindset to do that, because I just have a feeling that my amounts of revisions and edits and revisions and edits and the ups and the downs through that journey was probably more than maybe the typical student. Just because, as Becca knows, writing is not my strongest. Winter was sharing about spelling. Spelling is not my strongest suit. I teach kids capital letter beginning of the sentence. Don't forget your end mark. Like, that's pretty much my, writing for the year. This is what a paragraph is, maybe by the end of the year if we're lucky. So I write like I talk, and that's not, it's an area I knew I had to grow the most in. So that was a struggle, but also thankfully, again, because I was feeding myself growth mindset every day going through that journey, it got me through it in the end. So
see, I wish I had go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm just going to keep asking questions if I don't stop. So you first, Becca.
Well, I was just going to say how I wish that when I was a kid, I was exposed to this, because first of all, I did see, like, looking back, I see a lot of growth mindset in you, but definitely not in myself in most areas. Just that fear of being seen, and there's a lot of things that play into it. But I always often felt like I was never just good at something. Like, that other people seemed like they could just do things and that they didn't have to study and study and study, or that they could just draw something and didn't have to erase a million times. And, like all those kinds of things. And I always felt bad about that. And now I'm like, oh, that's actually normal. But as a kid, I didn't see it that way. Like, sorry, my cat's knocking stuff off the table now. At least it's not the computer this time. So anyhow, like, that's just something, like, just even understanding that from an early age, that it's normal to have to try, and that it's normal to not get it right the first few times. And for some things, it's okay to have to work really hard at it if it's something that you want. But
in our generation, though, our generation was big on praise and encourage no matter what. That's okay. You were still awesome. That's okay. That was great. And like, instead of saying,
next time.
Yeah, Becca, that drawing is okay. It's not actually the best drawing, but this is how we can make it better next time. Right? Instead, it was like, well, just praise them, self-esteem, make them feel good. And that was like the huge movement of, like, I don't know, probably at least a decade, if not two, of our childhood. I don't know how old Winter and Nikki are, but that was a big thing. Like, praise, encourage. They're awesome. They're wonderful. They're great. Well, okay, actually, that wasn't the best try, or the best outcome that time. Let's reflect on this. How can we make this better? What can we do differently next time? And then encourage and praise the fact that you did a second drawing, or that you did erase and you changed it, and how could we make that picture look more realistic, or whatever it was you're trying to do. Which I think, again, focusing on that praise and the fact that maybe if your child has trouble paying attention or focusing, and they're actually paying attention, then praise the fact that they're paying attention right now, even if they read the sentence wrong, even if they spelled the word wrong. You can say, like, well, it's okay to say that word isn't spelled right, or you didn't do the math problem right, but I liked how you were paying attention and you focused on the problem the whole time, and you weren't, looking out the window, or, you used the right strategy. You didn't add when you were supposed to subtract, or you didn't multiply, like, you just made a mistake here. Let's find it. Let's fix it. So process praise instead of making it all about the intelligence and the talent, because I think Becca probably struggled more like Zachary did, because you were probably like I want to say probably, you have a higher IQ than me. You probably are just smarter than me, and it's harder for the people who are more gifted to have a growth mindset because they're so used to people telling them, great job, you're so smart. Look at your A, look at your honor roll. And they're so used, then there's going to be, it's going to happen. They're going to be faced with a challenge. They're going to get a bad grade. They're going to mess up. And then they panic because they don't know what to do with that wasn't perfect. That didn't get me an A. I fell, whatever it was. And they're not used to having to overcome those challenges because they're used to things coming more easily. But usually, and I say this very generically, like 5th grade tends to be like that balancing play field where it's like, oh, these kids are so smart. And it just kind of tends to balance out sometimes in middle school. Again, not for every individual, but those kids who had it really easy early on, they will struggle when they're faced with trying to overcome some sort of adversity.
They do struggle. Because that generation is now in the workforce. And for those of us who work for large companies, I mean, I work as a corporate trainer for a financial institution. It is a coaching environment, as most major companies are now. And if you do any study or work within executive coaching, it's not all you did great. It's making them self-discover the areas where they need to improve. And you'll look at people who were always raised with that constant positive reinforcement, regardless of what the outcome was, and they look at you like a deer in headlights. They have no way of identifying areas of improvement. And I think we see it a lot even in the creative world. We have a lot of creatives that are part of this group, right? We've got writers and artists and things like that. And we come out with a product or something that we've spent a lot of time working on, and we expect to succeed. We expect to get positive feedback or so many reviews or, glowing accommodations or, to get publishers to pick us up right away if you're a writer. And that doesn't work that way in the real world, right? We have to figure out what we need to do to adjust to make it better each time we put another product out or another service out. And I think that's a huge struggle for the generation that was the self-esteem generation. I give them all the praise because we don't know how to grow our mindsets. Now I'm 81. I just became a millennial when they reorganized everything. So I don't necessarily identify with the newer millennials, but my sister is 5 years younger than me, and her entire life was told how fabulous she was. My father laughs. She was brought up in participation trophy age, right? Like everything she did was perfect. And then she went and got a job at the Four Seasons, and nothing she did was perfect for a long time. And so, and they're a company that's, world renowned for amazing service, and you step out there and they do expect perfection. And so it's hard, I think, for a lot of people who were not brought up with growth mindset. Like Becca said, if we didn't get it when we were younger, it's very hard to make those adjustments as an adult. It's very possible, but it is a constant daily thing. It's a daily practice until it becomes second nature.
But that's the exciting part, is that, you can change your mindset. And there's just been a ton of research on people of all ages that Carol Dweck and many others, after she started leading that charge, and she's paired up with most of them in the research, is that your mindsets can change. So, learning about it and what it is, and then making that effort to, because it doesn't have to just be in school. Is it easier to maybe start in elementary school, but most of the research is in like middle schoolers. A lot of the research that I could, when I was looking for research, wasn't in elementary school. And I think in focusing a little bit on one of the things that you mentioned before is the power of yet. And that's one of, Carol Dweck's, like, I don't want to say,
a mantra, kind of?
I don't know. Yeah, like one of her power phrases. I don't know. Yeah, like I don't know how to even, but that's like one of the big, and you'll see posters and all kinds of things with like the power of yet, and focusing on that in the workforce or in a relationship, with your family, with your friends, school, is just like follow everything you say by like yet, and get the kids or get whoever saying, I can't do that. You just can't do that yet. I'm not good at this. You're not good at it yet. And just repeating that over and over again. And maybe it means repeating it to yourself too when you find that fixed mindset creeping in. Is like, okay, I'm not good at cooking this meal yet. You know, I'm going to get better at it if I just keep working hard. And I can't ride my bike. Can't do this. You can't do it yet. You know, if you stop and you give up, well, yeah, you're right. You're never going to learn how to ride your bike. But if you keep trying every day, like you will eventually learn how to ride that bike. If you want it bad enough.
Right.
So recently we did a book study on, the book's called Peaks and Valleys. I can't remember the name of the author right now, and it's in the other room. And then had a growth mindset conversation on how it related to peaks and valleys. And the book is essentially, you know, you basically plot out all the peaks and valleys that you've had over a time frame in your life. And it was interesting the amount of people who came back to it after learning a little bit about the growth mindset and found that our valleys were typically where we had that fixed mindset. And it wasn't until you started your incline to your peak again that you were actually displaying behaviors of a growth mindset. And so I thought it was a really interesting representation of how easily, I mean, you get fixed enough in one thing that you can't do, or you're incapable of, or you're at your maximum, or you're at capacity, and you cannot move past it. Your life will literally stop and be stuck right there until you can move past it for some of the bigger stuff. And it was really interesting because, I mean, we're talking, there's like 16, 17 people in the group. And at the end of it, hearing so many people share the amount of times they were stuck in a valley was just a fixed mindset where they didn't think they could get out of it. And then something happened, some trigger happened that made them believe they could. Wouldn't it be nice if
Listening someone else do it?
But an exercise like that might be the thing the next time they're in the valley that they remember, okay, I can get myself out of this. You know, the more exercises you do, listening for that fixed mindset voice and training yourself. You know, when I pay attention to this and I hear myself being in a fixed mindset, I'm going to change my self-talk. I'm going to change, you know, the way I'm talking to myself or relating to myself or processing things or reflecting on things.
Yeah.
The thing I see, I guess because it's something that wasn't something I could do and then I think I'm doing better about, is that you can tell the difference with people who are not afraid to just try something, like something that they couldn't do, that they're not afraid or embarrassed to put themselves out there in front of other people, for example, or to take on some kind of challenge. And you can see people, and I could see it myself, like how many times I didn't take on a challenge because I didn't think I could do it, or I was afraid of, sorry, the cat's coming after the computer again. And I didn't think that I would be able to do it well enough to not be embarrassed. You know, that perfectionism coming in, and when people don't have that, how much freer they are to just have fun with something. And maybe you do try it and say, okay, wait, never mind, that's not for me, because you can't do everything. So like, it doesn't make sense to just randomly decide you're going to get good at everything, right? I mean,
right.
But sometimes you meet those people who are good at so many things, and usually, well, probably they just have a natural knack for some things, but clearly they tried it first, right? Like they tried it before they knew how to do it, and then they tried it some more.
Do you ever wonder
not
if you have a
avoiding
natural
it.
knack
Better
for
at
something?
something. What?
I was gonna say, do you ever wonder if you have a natural knack for something that you just never tried before? Because I'm like you, I'm not good at any, like there's nothing that I'm phenomenal at. Like I'm mediocre at best at most things in my life. And it's like, there's gotta be something that I just forgot to do at some point, and that was my thing. Like There's got to be something else out there. Yet I'm the one that's
afraid
always
that
embarrassed to try new things.
Yeah. I'm afraid the things that I'm good at are things that I wouldn't want to do a lot of.
Well,
like,
and that's where, like, as you
really
get
great
older,
at cleaning and really great at.
when you get older, you get more self-conscious then, and so if that goes back to like, okay, let's teach this to people when they're younger, so that they don't, because then they're afraid. That fear creeps in, and that self-consciousness, and they're like, never mind, I'm just not even going to try it because I might look bad. If perhaps they were taught that earlier on,
Mm-hmm.
you realize, guess what? My parents have made mistakes all the time. My teachers make mistakes all the time. My friends have all made mistakes. Like, more than likely, if we actually share the mistakes we make, we will find that they're like common mistakes that like most human beings have made. I'm not the only one who has poured garlic by the opposite end on act. Like, I know I'm not. So instead of like covering that up, just being like, hey guys, sorry in advance if this is gross because I goofed and this is what happened, and don't feel obligated to eat it. I tried to get out what I could. Like, I'm not the only one who's ever done that. And all of our mistakes in life are usually like that, whether it's parenting, mistakes in our marriages, mistakes with our, relationships with others, our jobs. Like, how many times have we been like, sorry, I did this, I didn't mean to. And they're like, yeah, 5 other people did that yesterday. Like, and if your bosses aren't like that, then maybe they have a fixed mindset.
But like, I would agonize over some kind of mistake like that for as long until I finally said something about it to, say, the boss, for example. Agonize and agonize over, I can't believe I made this mistake. And then still agonize after
I'm
the
going
fact.
to disclose something. In 1999, what was that? 22 years ago now? Is that right? Is that real? That's real.
Yeah, that's the year I graduated. Depending on the time of year.
I was working.
That's the year I graduated.
That's really scary. That's really scary. I was working like my first semi-professional job. Just graduated. I was like a payroll clerk, and I sorted a spreadsheet wrong and mailed checks to all these people in the wrong amount. This is before we had like direct deposit, anything, right? And
that's pretty bad.
To this day, I still have nightmares over it. So if you want to talk about obsessing, and it wasn't that hard. We just resorted it and cut checks and fixed it. Like, I was hysterically crying in front of the owner of the company for like an hour. And then finally he was like, what are you going to do to fix it? And I was like, I can fix it. I'll fix it. I can fit it. And I fixed it. So by like the next day, everybody had everything they needed. But still today, to this day, I will have nightmares over that.
But your boss could have taken a different angle, and instead of encouraging a growth mindset, could have encouraged you to have a fixed. Yeah, and that would have probably influenced you to then, for years, to have more of a fixed mindset instead of, you know what, the influence changed. Just a simple thing like that, and how he reacted or responded to that incident, And a lot of times, who knows, now later in life, when someone else makes a mistake like that, that you're gonna like draw from your mistake and be like, oh, one time I did like, like I've forgotten to do attendance before in school, and like the day 4 o'clock hits and I'm like, I never entered attendance. And then you have, it's kind of this process you have to take. And like the first time you're like afraid and you're fearful and trying to think of excuses as to why. And then you, again, okay, how am I going to reflect and respond? Make myself a Post-it note, set an alarm, whatever I need to do until this becomes a routine and habit. But years later, when I'm mentoring a new teacher and they forgot to do attendance, and I can quickly ease their mind and say, yeah, I did that before and that's okay. Like, this is all you need to do, and you apologize and it'll be all right. The world is not over, and it just like completely eases them. So there will be a time, I'm sure, where you'll be able to ease someone, else who thinks that's it. My life is over.
Yeah. Thank God I don't work in that line of work and never have since. but I'm sure I've used the story to relate to other screw-ups before in my life.
Well, in the kitchen, that's a place where I really do have cultivated a growth mindset. And probably that's because when I was young, like, what was I? When I started working at McDonald's, I was 17 or 16, and I couldn't learn how to do this cash register without being so nervous. And I'd been there a couple weeks, which was too long. And this one guy finally said, he's like, "You are just too worried about messing up. Who cares? It's a burger." And I was like,
the manager can come over and override it. It's okay.
Yeah, but I didn't mess up that much, but I was so slow and whatever. And like, once I just accepted, no, it's okay if I mess up. And then, that was really, I think, the beginning of me accepting messing up.
Yeah.
Before that, like, my whole life, I can't think of any aspects of my life where I wasn't afraid to mess up. And it just crippled everything. And now I'll be running a kitchen or something, which of course hasn't happened in a long time because I've been home, but I would say, I would be explaining to someone new or whatever how to do something, or on a new task they hadn't done before, and I'd say, now make sure you don't do such and such, or if you do this, don't, this was going to happen, so do it this way. And then I'll say, ask me how I know. And that became like a mantra for me, like, to say, like, I have messed up so many things, and now I know what happens if you do that. So I'll just tell you, so you don't have to go through that too. But, and it doesn't bother me. Like, there was a time in my life where I would have been terrified to admit that I had done that. I would have just let the person totally screw up the whole thing because I would have been afraid to tell them that I had done that. And now I'm like, oh no, don't do that. Ask me how I know.
Right. I like that. One of the videos I sent you.
Sorry, go ahead.
One of the videos that I shared with Becca, I don't know if you guys are sharing out some of those resources, but she phrased it as fail forward. And that was like her phrase, like you were saying, like, ask me how I know. Like, don't, you're going to make mistakes. It is going to happen. Practice that self-reflection. Give yourself some compassion. Like, allow yourself that, because it's going to happen. When it does, fail forward.
I went to an event 2 weekends ago called Total Rewire, and it was basically about mindset, growth mindset, and specifically about what you're talking about is how to take a situation now and look at it and consider how to do it better next time, or what was good from it. Well, this is about that, plus going back to old root events in your lives that affect you now and in the future. And one of the biggest things I got out of it was something that both of you were saying, Becca and Nikki, was that you had a situation in your life and you were like, it just held on to you. And I realized that I lived in guilt over certain things, and they kept coming up over and over and over. And one of the things he said was that it keeps you from moving forward. It keeps you from trying new things. It keeps you stunted. And so he teaches you how to look at a situation and instead find both the positive and the negative from every situation, so that you can say, what did I learn from that? Even though it wasn't the outcome I wanted, there was some positive from it. And if it was a good situation, okay, I got a new job. That's great. What are some negatives of this, so that I can be aware and not be overly excited about it, so that I could just stay grounded and enjoy it as it comes. So it was a really cool rationalization and realization that I've actually been taking with me the last couple of weeks, and it makes it easier for me to not get upset over things.
Yeah,
and if you do get upset over something, acknowledge it and apologize to parties if that's what needs to happen, and grow from it, right? I mean, you yell at your kids and you're like, oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have yelled at you, or whatever, and then just don't be afraid as a parent to acknowledge that and say, like, I messed up. I shouldn't have reacted that way. I'm sorry. Let them see your mistakes. We don't have to pretend to be these perfect humans, these perfect parents, these perfect wives, it's okay.
How would you say you could help a teenager who grew up in the rah rah, you're great at everything, and so when they become a teenager and you're like, oh, that wasn't so great. What about if you did it this way? And instead of taking it as, oh, I could do better, they take it as criticism. How do you help a teenager with that?
I do think the older we try to teach it, the harder it is because that fixed mindset is ingrained a little deeper. And so, like, repeating that over and over again, like, again, model the mistake making, model the self-reflection, model the um, the self-talk, and then actually use that talk with them, the positive praise of their effort and their process. And, you know, when they do come home with that bad grade, okay, I'm not going to yell at you for it. Did you actually study your hardest? Did you actually try your best? And if you did, and that is your best, that's okay. Let's find out some new testing taking strategies or some new study strategies, because obviously that didn't work so well, or whatever, like, but not getting upset, letting them see that, like, okay, I'm not mad at you because you got a C. Maybe it's, if you could have gotten an A, well, then I'm disappointed that you didn't maybe reach your fullest potential. But modeling that, sometimes, at least I know, like, for something like swimming or riding your bike, all right, like, don't give up, keep trying, take your time, try your best, like, just that positive talk a lot. But it's definitely harder when they're older. And I think there's this natural, again, whether that's because maybe they're more gifted or if it's because of past experiences, sometimes certain individuals just do have more of a natural fixed mindset than others. And I don't think they know the answer to why that is yet. But hopefully, if we really work hard, whatever point of the life is that you're trying to influence that growth mindset, to just keep trying, and if you're modeling it for them, eventually, hopefully they'll see it. But that's one of my goals. I hope that I can get into classrooms more often, and not just my school, but maybe some professional development of other schools, because they're hearing their teachers, 7 or 8 hours a day. They're hearing your voice 3 or 4. And so if we can get schools to really adopt this growth mindset instruction and strategies and modeling, then maybe we'll have a better chance at influencing more lives.
Yeah. And remembering that
Great
it's a
example.
process. Learning to have a growth mindset is as much a process as anything that you're trying to have a growth mindset about.
Mhm.
So, or maybe more, probably more.
And I think using real life examples like Michael Jordan and really the Olympians, like, you could look at so many of them and they all have these stories of, failures and the times when they didn't make the team, or they fell off the, balance beam, or whatever, and use those examples and show them, if your teenager has a hero or someone or sport or something that they really look up to, and say, like, well, look, that person, that football quarterback wasn't always like the greatest of all time. Like, they didn't make the team, or they weren't the first, what is it called when you're on the first line and you're not like, you're like the backup player. Yeah, you're not the starter, like, so, like, if you can pull from some of those heroes in their lives, and maybe that'll influence that, because all they see is this all-star player, or this all-star musician, or this, whatever it is,
Right.
and they don't see the years and years of hard work, failures, mistakes. Like, I'll tell my son, like, you're not always going to get the job that you interview for. Like, I hope you do. I hope you have great success, but like, it's going to happen at some point. You're going to interview and they're going to say no, and they're going to pick somebody else, right? Like, it's probably going to happen. So what are you going to do with
Probably
that
a lot.
when it does, you know? Josh Walskin, the chess player, one of the videos that I shared with you was talking about him and how he was saying, because I think they made that movie after him. What was that chess movie? That is it Bobby Fischer?
Searching for Bobby Fischer.
It may have been. Was that the chess movie?
I don't remember the kid's name.
So he was talking about how did he become this world famous best chess player ever, was because he lost like the very first tournament he was in. You know, so like there's something for everybody, whether again it's like music or something more academic or something more sports related. Like you can always find someone who has gone from like the bottom and worked really hard and persisted and didn't give up and, you know, reflected and learned from their mistakes and weren't afraid to try it. And that's why they ended up where they were at, you know, successful.
Yeah, that's cool.
His quote, I have a
I wish
quote.
there were stories of women like that.
People will say there, see, my brain is clogged. She has like, she's, oh goodness, African-American woman who has her own talk show and is like world famous.
Oprah.
Oprah. Jeez Louise. Like, ooh, right here. Yeah, people will share that story. And her, you know, like
Martha
her story.
Stewart's another one. You hear only a few though, yet you hear so many. I guess it's probably more popular with athletes coming forward and talking about how what they've had to overcome to succeed.
Yeah.
And there's not as many popular women athletes, but it would be really cool if there were a lot more women go-tos that were like that. Because you hear Michael Jordan, you hear Arnold Schwarzenegger, The Rock, like all the standard ones with their famous quotes and everything that they've overcome. And it's like, where's the women? It's so hard for us to admit when we've failed numerous times in order to overcome and become successful. I want to hear more women out there.
Well, I think also for women, though, it's often hard to admit success. Like there's something for a lot of us that I'm not sure what it is, like false humility or fear of the spotlight. Or if you say I succeeded, then you feel like now I'm up at a standard and people are going to judge me by that. And if I'm not perfect again, you know, if the next one isn't as good as this one, if my next painting doesn't sell for more, then I'll be, then I'm not a success anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah.
different things it can be, but that's something, you know, my next, like kids, you know, like, well, my next, if you say like, oh, this is an amazing painting, like, then they might be afraid to show you the next one. Cause like, what if you don't like it as much? Or what if it's not better? And so that's something I've been thinking about lately, is like trying to think of, like you were saying earlier, better ways of saying, I love your painting. Like, oh, I like how you did this specific thing, and I like how the colors are blended here, instead of making those, what do you call it? Like the end,
The product.
instead of the end result,
Yeah.
instead of praising the end result, praising the process, so that they're not afraid to try more processes. And I'm like,
and there are a lot of good
idea.
books out there that actually help now teach growth mindset. Like you could just Google it, and I shared just a snip with Becca in an email, like that we use in our classrooms all the time, because then you can like read it and it's really relatable. Like one that I do is Giraffes Can't Dance, and it's about this giraffe not being able to dance yet, but then by the end, you know, it's a power of yet kind of a book. And there's so many that teach growth mindset in a fun way that the kids then are like, wow, I can be like that too, and I can do that, and I can, you know, I can relate to that character and what happened to it. One was like, one that I just used last year for the first time about making a mistake. And it was about, the girl who never messes up and never makes mistakes. And then at the end, there's like a twist, and I won't give it away, but it's like, oh, okay. Everything was a mistake, and it's just what you make out of it.
Mm.
But I liked one of Josh Watkins' quotes he said, "The moment we believe that success is determined by an ingrained level of ability, we will be brittle in the face of adversity." And I think that's something that, as I have now learned more of, like, okay, I feel confident in knowing what growth mindset is. Now I want to take it myself personally to the next level of how can I apply this to more areas of my life, and realizing that those challenges, the mindset, it's not just what do I do when I'm faced with a challenge. It's not just what do I do, when something goes wrong, but it's the mindset that keeps me going. It's the mindset that makes that effort, makes that resilience, has me continuing my focus. That part is what is that deeper level. You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense, but personally, that's like the journey I'm on now. Like, okay, I know what growth mindset is. I did a lot of research about it. I interviewed, teachers, and they shared their stories, and I wrote about it. What is it that is that deeper level of changing my mindset, so that I have the necessary tools to be persistent, to stay, focused and be resilient.
All right. Now we all have a challenge.
I know.
We do, right? We always have something to learn. We're never done learning.
Yeah, it's no fun anymore.
Yeah.
When I was young, I remember thinking like, oh, well, like that you would arrive at some point.
Yeah.
Having a job or whatever it is, right? A career, marriage, whatever it was, thinking like, then that's settled. Because I felt like that's how a lot of people were. Like adults, that's how it was. That's what I saw.
At least
but
that's
now I'm
the
like,
facade that they put.
Yeah.
That's the facade they put forward to you that you see.
Yeah, that this is where they are. And maybe also it's just being naive, as a kid. But yeah, I wouldn't even want that now. Like, that's just no fun. In fact, I can drive my husband crazy sometimes. I mean, not that he's not that way too. He is. He always wants to do something else, but I'm a little annoying.
I don't know. I got all the things I thought I wanted as a kid, and then I realized I needed to learn because I wanted to do other things. I mean, it was a year ago. I learned that I decided I wanted to write books, and so who knows what next year I'll decide I need to learn that. And so I think it's kind of one of the processes that we always have to have moving forward. But thank you so much, Deborah, for coming on tonight and talking about growth mindset. I know this was a topic that we were wanting to dig into because it affects everything pretty much that we do, and we could probably sit and talk about it for hours. But as she mentioned in the live, she did forward some resources to us, so we edited version our YouTube page. We'll go ahead and link to those as well.
Try to put them on the Facebook thing too. Just
yeah, if you could link them in a comment.
Remember, yeah,
because it takes me like a year to edit and upload everything. You could say it all. We'll get those resources to you guys.
Thank you for coming.
All right.